Okay, so welcome to the MEF Content and Advertising September working group. We had a bit of a break there for August. We take August off for most of our working groups, so it's good to be back. So I'll go right into this presentation here before we hand over to our guest. So here we are, MEF Content and Advertising September. So we have the MEF antitrust policy, which we always flash. We're all about protecting the consumer here at MEF. As particularly in advertising, where there's a lot of fraud in advertising, especially in digital advertising, which we're about to hear about. We have the MEF team, so it's myself, Narayan, who run this working group, along with James, and then Eva, who's the administrative lead. And then, of course, the mission of the Content and Advertising Working Group is to become the industry voice on how to better serve customers through personalization while protecting consumer trust in the digital era. So we've got a pretty small, we've got the group, a couple of people here, so we don't have to be too formal, I guess. But I have a guest here who's Peter from TV AdSync. I used to work for TV AdSync back in the day. I spoke about it a little bit once, but Peter is the co-founder and the commercial director. So he's a good one to have on though, because his background is in telecoms, really, right, Peter? And so you might be able to relate it nicely to what everyone else is doing here today. So what I'll do, I'll just hand over to you. You've like a couple of slides, but I think it's going to be more of a conversational working group. So go ahead and just show us what you have anyway.
Yeah, let me just have a quick look here.
Yeah.
So here we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for that introduction, Ross. Yes, Ross, when Ross left, we were left in the pain because Ross is one of the most conscientious, fast-working and smart people we ever found working with us. So it was a bit of a letdown. But as a thank you for his time with us, I was delighted to participate in the session and maybe share some views on what I think are interesting differences, but also analogies between what happened in the mobile industry in and around the 2000s, 2010s, and what is now happening in television. And it obviously has to do with the way the internet has completely transformed industries over time. TV is sort of one that's being disrupted very much now. And I came to that realization in a sort of a novel and interesting way. My co-founder and I had a business in the early 2000s, which was basically a way before smartphones to use location on the device, which was at the time done by tracking the cell ID of that's stored in the OS, and trying to find things of interest nearby. So we built a startup and gave it 3 years, found some interesting applications for it in the form of sharing your location on a social network, sharing your location with a business, sharing your location with taxis, etc. But we failed to find a business model quickly enough. And in the process of trying to decide what to do with the business, it was called Local, which spelled L-O-C-L-E. We had a conversation with Myriad Group, at the time a substantial telecoms group, both active on the device side as well as on the mobile operator side. And we made a real go of it, selling our technology to them. And in the end, they didn't proceed with the acquisition. They acquired a different company, which was similar, but a little different enough, and then hired me to look after that division. So the timing was good because I had just had a first child around that time. So being in a startup with one child and perhaps another one, which then duly arrived, was maybe a good time to be in gainful employment, where you're not responsible for your own paycheck, other than fulfilling the job at hand. When at Myriad Group, I was the head of the messaging products, and in particular the IP messaging products. So the company they had acquired it's called Zoomy. They built a way to aggregate different social networks and store the friendship information or the friend relationships on your device in the application, and be able to message over IP with those friends. So it was sort of an early alternative to what later became RCS, essentially. And in the process of working there, I made a friend in the device business who was working on set-top box, middleware, and applications. And they, at the time, were working with some of the large device makers, the likes of Pantech and Sharp in Asia. And we had built a number of prototypes that allowed closed user group messaging, if you will. So if you're watching the same TV show, you could create a group and have a back channel, if you will, chatting about what was happening in this particular TV show. So we pitched this to a number of content owners and also to the device makers and cable set-top box operators. Didn't really get any traction. It was quite an early development. It wasn't as common yet to be watching TV with your mobile phone in hand. But that started to shift and then around the sort of 2013, 2014 timeframe. By then, it became almost normal for everyone to use their phone while they're watching TV. And it was in and around that time that I joined forces again with my previous co-founder, Ronan, to set up TV AdSync. And the premise was fairly simple. If people are watching television, they're exposed to TV advertising. If you know that they are exposed to TV advertising on a Saturday night at 8 o'clock, just before the news, and you serve them an ad which is related to whatever advertising might play on the TV, there's going to be an increase in the effectiveness of the digital advertising served on the smaller screen. We tested this. We ran a bunch of A/B tests as to whether it would be better to have someone see a Toyota spot and then be what we called retargeted on their mobile phone with a Toyota spot, or whether it was equally good to have a Honda spot featured. And the effectiveness overall improved if the vertical was aligned. It just showed that there was a strong link between the two behaviors of watching TV and being distracted by a mobile phone. So that idea became business in 2015. We initially licensed some tech out of a German research institute that would be able to do detection in broadcast, and we would trigger buys to serve ads on mobile and desktop through a DSP, and slowly built that business first in Ireland, then UK, Turkey, Germany, and got some good traction. Grew from the two of us upstairs in a room to 4 people, and met someone in LA who said, "Yeah, we'd love to take this business to America." The very first meeting at Hasbro with the global head of marketing became very clear that the way TV viewing works in the US, by having such an enormous amount of channels and the audience being spread so much, it wouldn't be as effective without knowing whether someone actually was exposed. Remembering my friend at Myriad, who was in the set-top box device side of the business, I found out he had joined a startup in California called Cognitive Networks, and they built a technology called automated content recognition, not to recognize content in broadcast, but in an individual device. So embed a small toolkit into a television that can track whatever happens on the screen and essentially record a history of what people are watching. By doing that, all of a sudden, we were able to say, okay, well, if someone is exposed specifically at a specific time, we can then build a user journey, consumer journey, following that user with a retargeted ad if that's well received. So we went to the US, started hiring people there, grew it from 4 to 8 to 10, and over the years, start working with other device manufacturers to aggregate as much data as possible from TV sets, set-top boxes, streaming devices, over-the-top services, etc., to basically get a view of what drives people to watch certain things. We kind of found a niche in content viewing, in that we were able to find not only promos for different programs, but also the time people ended up watching a particular show. So by now we can conceivably consider ourselves one of the leaders in the space. not only having a media product, but also a data and insights product that helps advertisers understand what happens, why do people watch, what are the type of people that watch, what else do they watch and why, and therefore help advertisers find those audiences on other devices and target them where they need to be, and measure how effective those campaigns are in driving viewership for particular shows. That is a huge technological lift in that the viewing information minute by minute is generates an enormous amount of data from millions of households. So we have a very sophisticated dashboard, sophisticated platform that takes in all that data, makes sense of it, uses a lot of machine learning and sophisticated data science to make sense of it. So all of our operations and data analysis and product development are sitting in Dublin, and all of our sales are in the US. And increasingly now we're starting to look at the European market, because as the pandemic has sort of shifted TV viewing from linear much more to streaming, we saw a consolidation of the way TV viewing data is made available in the US to coming behind closed walls. So Samsung has its own connected TV product. It uses its own data on viewership to promote its own content on its own channels. Same with LG, same with Vizio. That hasn't happened yet and is unlikely to be as significant in Europe. So we're kind of changing our focus slightly to look at opportunities here now. We work with all the main brands, you know, in entertainment. So talking about the future of media and content, etc., seemed like an opportune thing for me to do. So when Ross invited me, I thought that might be an interesting thing to just brainstorm. What does this business look like? How will it evolve? How is it different from how the disruption of traditional mobile happened? And maybe learn something from the conversation. And that's about it.
Cool. Thanks for that, Peter. Thanks for the introduction. So maybe, I don't know, we could kind of discuss some of the interesting parallels you've seen between the TV market and the phone market. You know, do you see sort of similarities in the way they're sort of going?
Yeah, I think so. And the one of the main things that's of interest in mobile is at least in the Western world, how if you look at the market share for the OS, it's pretty much split evenly between Apple, iOS, and Android. And that's a natural outcome of, I think, what happened in the desktop PC dominance of Google. When mobile started to take off, they really put all their effort in becoming the centerpiece of the user experience, which isn't the device, but is the user experience on the device. And so acquiring Android was the greatest coup, I think, Alphabet ever made, because it went from a market share, a significant market share in one business, the desktop internet, to 50% market share in the mobile internet, which will that happen, and how could it happen in television? I think is different because the device makers that went into making mobile phones had not been making mobile phones. Or sorry, they had been making mobile phones, but the mobile phones became different types of devices. TVs have been around for much longer, and so much more established, and are already part of a consolidated, let's say, horizontally consolidated groups. So most TV manufacturers make refrigerators, air conditioning units. I was at IFA last week and saw that LG is now also making a sneaker fridge, as well as indoor herb garden units for kitchens, etc. So it's a little bit different. That doesn't change the fact that the OS may still be the cornerstone of the disruption in advertising for TV and digital. But the OS is no longer a translation of what happens from desktop to mobile. It's a translation of what happens from TV to, let's say, fridge or any other device. And that user experience is a different one. At the same time, Google has an OS for TVs. It has an OS for other devices, for home devices, IoT, etc. So there is a sort of reason enough to think that Google is not going to just let go of the TV advertising business, even as it shifts more to over the top and connected TV advertising from linear.
Mm. And do you think, like, do you see the same sort of consolidation in TV that, like, you know, we've seen with phones in a way?
Well, with if we go back to the time of before Sony and Ericsson became Sony Ericsson, each device maker had its own OS, and the user experience of that OS, a little bit together with the look of the device, decided why people would buy the device, right? And the difference between one flat panel TV and another flat panel TV, it's not huge. So it really is about the user experience. And so what happens on the device? I think one of the big reasons and non-advertising supported content has gotten so popular in the last few years is that people really like the user experience of not having advertising. But that forgoes the reality of advertising basically being the funding model for still 80% of, or maybe not, 60% of all content around. And without it, content can't survive. So then go back to what happened to the likes of Sony and Ericsson and Siemens and all the other device makers. Why did they end up losing out? The ones that are left are Samsung and Samsung. There are many devices still sold, but they don't come anywhere near the number of devices that Samsung makes. And in TV, you have Samsung and LG in Western markets. Anyway, those would be the leaders. But you have a lot of challenger brands, and those challenger brands do a lot of good cooperation with the local MVPDs, the local cable companies. For example, you're seeing a lot more that the cable companies are releasing their own device. Actually, an analogy to the rise of the mobile internet, when a lot of device makers started making specific devices for the likes of mobile operators. But the main difference, I think, is that what you had in the disruption to mobile is the rise of social networks. And social networks changed the way and really replaced the way mobile phones were used for communication. And I don't know yet if there is a new type of consumption behavior other than streaming as a general concept, but it's similar enough to linear TV watching that makes a smart TV so much better. It changes the value chain somewhat, but the consolidation that happened doesn't require Google to provide a user experience. All of the content over the top consumption is already going direct to consumer, and it doesn't require Google to sit in the middle.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions? Want to jump in?
I do. There's such a, Peter, there's such a fine line. All our smart devices are listening to us. Our phones, obviously our TVs, and you can be just talking about something very innocuous with a friend, your other half, whomever, and then bang, you receive an advert an hour later. It could be the day after, about exactly what you were talking about. It might be something you've never brought up before.
Mm-hmm.
I think you probably know what I'm going to say next. But do you think things are moving too far into the realms of being a little bit creepy, or how does the industry self-regulate so that there isn't a knee-jerk reaction and people go, hang on a sec, by people I'm talking about governments, the regulators really step in and say, hang on a second, things are going way too far, you've got to lock absolutely everything down. How does the industry stop that from happening?
Well, that wasn't entirely what I thought you were going to ask.
Okay.
How do you feel about being in that industry, which is the more personal question?
No, not at all. Yeah.
Well, there is no actual listening to microphones in anything we do, and
no, not that you do, but you know so much. There's so much around the industry.
But don't forget that one of the prime reasons for Android getting popular, Chromecast as well, is or the Google speakers, and Amazon with the voice recognition is please turn on channel 1. The user experience of asking the TV to go to channel 1 or go to Disney Plus is infinitely better than clicking through 3 or 4 steps till you get there. And with a TV, that transition has already happened. All of the major TV brands have some voice recognition built in. That actually is an interesting point about gives me a segue into Amazon. Amazon was important on the desktop web, didn't necessarily do anything actively to gain any more prominence in the mobile web. It focused on a bunch of optimizing other parts of its business. But now in TV, they are clearly there. The Amazon TV is, I think, number 4 in the US, if I'm saying that right. Yeah, I think so. And it's a very good experience. It's its own service. So you have content, device, and then a whole bunch of other services that are layered in as well. And so if Amazon records what I say, which it doesn't necessarily, but is that enough of a user experience improvement for me to decide, actually, fine, let's leave the microphone open? And in the scheme of IoT, predicting whether, if I'm talking to my wife, asking her, do we have any milk left? And the answer is no. For there to be an if this then that connection that says, actually just add milk to the shopping list for next week, I don't necessarily see that as bad user experience. So I hear your concern completely. I think for the consumer, it's still, until there is a clear sort of rise of backlash rising against it, it's still considered handy enough.
Because people are very strange individuals. So you've got so many, hundreds of millions of people put their whole lives on social media. They'll share everything. Yet, heaven forbid, a company sends them one spam email, or they get a robocall from a brand they know, and then they absolutely launch like a Saturn V rocket, or SpaceX rocket now. Let me get into the modern era. They absolutely launch at the brand and go, how dare you, etc., etc. So it's a weird psychology around the consumer at the moment. So they're totally free with information in many areas, but when it comes to interactions with brands, they're a bit more guarded sometimes. Yeah.
Can I turn the question around? Because you mean,
please.
With respect, you've been longer in this industry than I have, because I've switched industries. I'm going to peg you at roughly the same age. What happens to the operators that they didn't benefit necessarily from the rise of advertising supported business models is possibly that concern, or an analogy to that concern. Don't you think?
I agree. I 100% agree, because if you look at so many mobile operators, they were state-owned as well. So they come from so many of the big ones came from the public sector, and they had that extra level of rules and regulations. And you look at what's happened now across Europe with GDPR and everything like that. And in recent years, it's just been because of GDPR, we can't do it. It's a fantastic excuse. Because of GDPR, we can't do it. When in actual fact, you can still do it. It's not limiting you from absolutely everything. It's not stopping you. But I think we also have to face the fact with mobile operators, their prime concern is delivering person-to-person connectivity. And even if you just peel it back to basic business-to-consumer text messaging, so A2P SMS, there's still so many mobile operators around the world that haven't got their heads around about what a wonderful opportunity is, and just to monetize that traffic. And the fact that their own person-to-person SMS traffic has been cannibalized by the OTTs. And we've got some people here who are part of the direct carrier billing for growth working group as well. So they straddle both this content and advertising world and the direct carrier billing and the payments world. They're on here as well, and I can see them. So it's all about innovation, and what is a mobile operator ultimately there to do. And that's an issue, because I'm sure there's a feeling from many MEF members that many mobile operators should perhaps be, in certain ways, a little bit more innovative, but because particularly in view of the threats from OTTs. But then again, what is their very reason for being? So, I don't know.
Well, let me not necessarily answer any of the points you raised, but maybe follow on in terms of the the way MVPDs and cable companies, like operators, controlled the user experience through a set-top box up until sort of this year, when devices subsidized by the set-top box was also subsidized, but the TV is now the access point, and that's happening. And the way entertainment brands in particular are built in this new environment is with applications that are running on that device. So it's more within the realm of possibility that operators retain a stronger position in that sense. So I'm just talking about the moving parts between a device maker, the operator, and the end consumer. Because if I buy a TV from, whether I buy one from Philips for 500 or from Ziggo in the Netherlands for 100, and it's subsidized through the subscription to a number of channels, I know what I'm doing, and I know what most consumers would do. Actually, I don't own a TV at all, so it's not really relevant. I have an LCD screen connected to a bunch of devices, so still a TV, but it's not a TV. But the fact that the cable operators in the US have gotten into the business of advertising, or at least through the carriage deals of particular channels and the ability to insert advertising, they've had a stake in that value chain. And in Europe, it's only recently started happening, but there isn't that much, and there's only a handful of operators that have their own channels. So it's still ripe for both disruption first and then consolidation in the European markets, and we're seeing it in light of the consolidation that happened in the US. All of the European operators European manufacturers are looking to either ourselves or Samba, or a partnership with the likes of LG for WebOS, which has become its TV operating system, and basically to create user experiences that help them embed themselves with a good user experience in consumers' living rooms.
Okay, now that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. Anyone else want to jump in and sort of add to that, or any other questions? Leon, do you want to jump in? I'm gonna pick on you because you have your camera on. So.
Right. No, I have no questions. Yeah, I remember James saying, like, do people see this kind of advertising as intrusive? Maybe. I think when people know how it works, they might see it as intrusive sometimes. But when you look back in time and you look at today's advertising technology, we all have to be honest, advertising became a lot more targeted and a lot less annoying than in the past. I remember as a kid, you had to go through 9 minutes of commercials before you could watch anything on TV. Now you just watch whatever you want. 9 out of 10 times you can just take a subscription. You don't get advertising. And if you see advertising, it is advertising that most of the time fits you. It gets better and better. And also, and I think this is a very important thing, there's also feedback from users. You can say at social media often, I don't like to see this advertising anymore. I'm not interested in this company. I see an ad from Heineken. I don't drink beer. Fuck you. I tick this box, and never, ever I will see a Heineken ad. It's not relevant to me. And if you use this user feedback for a while, well, if I go to social media, it's actually far from annoying. If I see an ad, after giving all this feedback, it became so smart. The only time I see advertising, it is something like, oh yeah, kind of cool. I was just looking for shoes. Oh, they know I like this brand. You know, it's the whole experience is getting better. So if you know the techniques behind it, yes, then and you look at it from a very dry perspective, like it sounds a little bit intrusive, but the result, the user experience in total is, if you ask me, is brilliant. It's way better.
I think, Leon, you're right.
Also way better to spend your advertising money as an advertiser, not annoying people, but just give people the message they want to see.
I think you raise a very good point, Leon. And for me, so much in life is becoming so focused that people are being put into a very small box. This is James. He votes for this political party. He lives here. He has this type of car. He doesn't like these clothes. He likes this food. And that's him. And that's it.
Yeah.
But the risk of doing this, and with everything having to be opt-in, you've got to opt in for this, opt in for that. When would we then ever receive ads for things that we might not necessarily originally have thought, actually, do you know what, I'd be interested in, but actually, let me go off and have a look. And then you find yourself actually interested in a new activity or a new type of music that you've never heard of or you've never seen before. And I think therein lies the danger of all the regulation and all the opt-in. You've got to have a double opt-in and everything, is that you're pigeonholed. So for the rest of your life, all I'm going to see or listen to is music from the 1980s and 1990s. All I'm going to watch are action films, and that's it. So there is there is a risk.
I'm a total fan of opt-out, not opt-in. That makes no sense.
Well, we know that from DCB, this whole pin flow thing, where we know all that stuff as well. Yeah.
Yeah, or when you buy a new SIM card in the UK, you have to unblock certain services, and you can't buy things with your mobile because you first have to unblock the possibility to pay, or things like that. That's a bit stupid. I don't like that at all. But but the targeted advertising in general and the brilliant things Peter does with his company it's great from an advertiser perspective, but also from a consumer perspective, it is super ideal. But again, it can be a bit creepy if you know how it all works. I mean, in mobile advertising, for example, they know if you read an article on the BBC website, they know whether you're the guy that reads the first alinea or you go to the third alinea, so they know exactly where the banner should be. They know when you have breakfast based on data from devices. They know you have kids because you have kids apps, so they go play a video of Nutella while you're at the third alinea of a BBC article. And right when you get to the supermarket, right in front on the parking, you check your email before you step into the supermarket. There's this annoying Nutella commercial again, and then you go to the shop and you can buy it. Yeah, it is smart and it is not necessarily annoying. So I don't know. I like it.
I like the simplification of it, of saying that it's smart, because it's not really. Ross can attest to that it's not necessarily.
I was going to say it goes both ways, in the sense that once you know what actually goes behind the scenes, a lot of it is smoke and mirrors, in that, you know, smoke and mirrors for the marketers, more or less. Like a lot of it, let's say I'm a media buyer and I'm buying what I think is this audience, you know, a lot of it is total BS, to be honest. Some of it's really good, some of it's not so good. So it is smart, and it's also not smart as people think. I think that's what you're getting at, Peter.
Yeah. I was going to share a dirty secret in that context. And it's not entirely dirty, because it's somewhat self-congratulatory in a way. We would often be asked, let's say, by an entertainment marketer who's launching a new show, and it's aimed at men in 35 to 50. With interest in the following things. And our speciality is to look into viewing data over time and say, well, the viewing pattern of this particular household suggests that there is a male of this particular demographic, and the viewing behavior specifically would suggest that they have a high propensity to tune into this particular show. So theoretically, we can create an accuracy of whether someone is going to convert from an ad that we show them based on the historical data. So if you know this, then you could go to an advertiser and say, give me not $100,000, but give me $10,000, and I'll make sure that every single person you reach will tune into your show. But no media buyer wants to hear, just give me $10,000. They want to be able to spend $100,000, because they get paid on a percentage of the media that they spend place with guys like us. So what ends up happening is we have this very granular look into the audience that should be reached by this particular program, and let's say we already know that this particular $10,000 is going to be spent best, then the agency says, what else you got? Can you also find people with a lower propensity? And can you serve them 5 ads? Of course we can. So it's going to be more costly for the advertiser to convert those viewers who aren't going to be tuning in or have a lower likelihood of tuning in. So that's to your point, James, that it's sort of there's a contradiction in this, in that if you were to be extremely precise about it and you would be completely honest, you'd go to the advertiser and say, don't spend 100,000, spend 10,000 because it's bang for your buck.
Actually, unfortunately, you go to them and say, use SMS, because 99% of people actually read their SMS, and 450% or more people click on links embedded within SMS than practically anything else, etc., etc. But yes.
Here's a thought for the working group, and I've talked to people in the industry on the operator side, trying to sell them on the idea of not just using SMS advertising, MMS advertising, or WAP, or in on portal, etc., but also to link up with a DSP, use a demand side platform to expand beyond your existing consumer base, and start finding out where to put those placements. So basically linking up your internal marketing departments with your advertising that's placed by the media agency that you've contracted, because linking that up in so many cases provides huge value, in that you already know who 80% of your subscribers are when you reach them with display advertising or connected TV advertising. It's much easier to create those insights if you are the owner or holder of first-party data. You can anonymize it for the purpose of actually advertising to people. But it's not, and it can be completely GDPR compliant as long as you have a registered user with an opt-in during the process of signing up. And so there are many opportunities for mobile operators to have their data be leveraged in some way beyond the simple use cases of location data and such other things. But in particular, for most advertisers still have this view of most media buyers who we work with have this view of, okay, I've got $100,000 budget and I want to spend it. And our worst days, if we can't actually spend enough money on a campaign, we have to tell the agency we fell short, because they have to go back to the client and say, yeah, your budget wasn't spent, meaning they lost 15% of the fee. So it's sort of a strange. Sorry, it's not strange. It's business that's been built over decades and just works that way. There's only a small number of agencies that have a slightly different model, where they charge their clients, their advertising clients, on the basis of people working on a project, etc. So, and the likes of Accenture and some other consulting companies who are moving into that space are increasingly doing that. But the bulk, 80% of media buying still happens this way. It's also why ad tech as a general area or an industry has grown so much over the last 15 years, because it's an easy way to very quickly get revenues in, and people still like making money quickly.
Yep, that's a great point. Anyone else have anything they want to add, or? I think we're all good. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you want, we can. I can plug a few MEF stuff, and we can start to finish up here. Let me just share my screen 1 second. So just coming up in terms of MEF, we have a advertising and content and mobile payments event coming up in Malaysia on January 11th and 12th. The venue is pending as far as last time I checked, but definitely if you're interested in that, come along, message me or James. So that's the big one for this group. We also have our wholesale event, which is online only, next week. So come along to that if there's any interest to you. And then James and myself will be in Berlin at the Global Carrier Billing Summit as well. If any of you guys are there, let us know. We can meet up with you guys. And then of course we have some MEF members at MEF Connects messaging in Vegas as well. So that's pretty much from everything we have here. Thanks for a great session. Thank you, Peter, for good discussion. I like the conversational tone of it. So yeah, thanks so much. See you guys next month, and yeah, have a good one.
Thanks guys very much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thanks, thank you. Bye.